Today, we're going to be talking about players that we want to sell before it's too late in your fantasy football, specifically your Dynasty Fantasy Football roster. And that could be a number of reasons. It could be decreased opportunity, could be injury, could be age, could be many different things. Or it could be because, Nate, you just don't like this guy, I feel. This first guy. I feel like you are not a fan, and I feel like you've been quite outspoken about that pretty much since before he's been drafted. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, this is a long-term sell that I've been hanging on to for a while. Dameon Pierce. Look, I love the Houston Texans offense right now. I love C.J. Stroud. I love Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Heck, I mean, I hope you pick up Noah Brown off waiver wires if you haven't already. He's been killing over the last 2 weeks. But Dameon Pierce, not so much. Currently the running back 39 in points per game on the season. Dameon Pierce has not been good this season. Devin Singletary came in there, and he didn't really do much the first couple of weeks, but as of late, he's been out-snapping Dameon Pierce this last game, 75% to 43%. Devin Singletary has been the lead back recently. I know Dameon Pierce has dealt with some injury, but also 0 targets for Dameon Pierce over the last 2 games, under 50% snap share in both those games. He has really become the in-between the tackles guy for this team, and that's about it, which is a shame because we know Dameon Pierce is a great pass blocker. We know that he can be really effective in the receiving game, but Devin Singletary, that crafty veteran, that team values that right now. And Dameon Pierce just has not been able to figure it out. He's not been able to be efficient when he's been on the field. And because of that, he's not out there getting snaps. He's not out there getting opportunities, opportunities that lead to fantasy points at least. Running back 39 on the season, not what you want, but you can still get out of Dameon Pierce, Mike. You can.
Tell me how, Nate.
You might be able to move him for a second-round pick still because he is a young running back, and people still like Dameon Pierce. Not everyone's given up on Dameon Pierce yet. Second-round pick you probably can get. Would love to get an early one, a mid one I'd still be fine with. Anything on top would be nice. But what about other running backs, more productive running backs? We might get some age, but I don't think Dameon Pierce has a lot of long-term value anyway, so I'm more than willing to move him for a more veteran running back, maybe like James Conner, who's coming off IR. I can likely get something on top of James Conner for Dameon Pierce. Can I get Najee Harris, who I know everyone loves to hate right now, but if I can get Najee Harris for Dameon Pierce, even just straight up, I like Najee Harris much better than Dameon Pierce. And he's got a lot more things going his way, like draft capital, and the fact that he still is getting snaps, even though Jaylen Warren has looked better than Najee Harris at times. Give me one of those guys. I just do not believe in Dameon Pierce. I have not. He doesn't have that top-end ceiling that, obviously it's not baked into his price anymore, but at this point, he's not even getting the receiving work that we were hoping for. It's time to move on.
And not only that, we're talking he has 12 targets on the season.
Yeah.
On the season, 9 catches for 84 yards. So his yards per reception actually went up, but he's not getting the targets. It doesn't really matter. His yards per carry is down. It was, what was it last year? It was 4.3 last year. Now it's just an even 3. So, yeah.
It's just 3?
Just 3.0.
That's not good at all.
It is not good at all. 1 touchdown on the season. And I mean, his highest total of the year is 81 yards. We're talking, it's just, if he's not getting a touchdown, he's been basically a liability. Look at his yardage totals so far. And he did miss this last game with an ankle injury. We should just clarify that. So when Nate's saying the last 2 games, he's talking about 2 games that he played. 38 yards, 31 yards, 31 yards, 81 yards, 66, 34, 46. And 1 touchdown, that was the game against Jacksonville. And then just really not much in the receiving game, like we mentioned. So he's been a disappointment. He's been a liability. I'll do it for the second. I'll do it for Najee. I would consider it for James Conner. If I have Dameon Pierce and I was relying on him and I'm trying to make a push, I would make that move for sure.
Yeah.
James Conner coming back soon. So I don't hate that at all. Completely agree. Hey, Dameon Pierce, prove us wrong. Adam Thielen is who I'm moving on from. I know. Does this hurt your soul a little bit?
A little bit. My Scott Fishbowl team, that's what hurts.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, he's currently the wide receiver 8 on the season. Look, currently wide receiver 8. Carolina has said he's not the guy moving forward. because they were looking for an alpha. They were pretty outspoken about that prior to the trade deadline. It didn't happen. That doesn't mean it won't happen at some point. So what I'm trying to do is, if I'm not contending and I can move Adam Thielen to a contender, I'm going to make that deal. He doesn't make sense for rebuild. He's 33, like I said.
You know what, Mike? See, I'm going to call you out, but also pat your back at the same time here.
That's the hypocrisy of fantasy football.
It's great. You just said he's not good for rebuild. Earlier this offseason, you had Adam Thielen as a rebuilding target, and you had him as a rebuilding target because you said you could flip him at some point.
And this is the time to flip him.
And I was like, why is Mike picking Adam Thielen as a rebuilding target? What's going on over here? And Mike, kudos to you, because this is the time to flip him, right?
Check out what you can get for him. And you were probably trading for him cheaply in the offseason, or I saw some people had even dropped him because they were like, I don't want anything to do with him. And I get it to a point, but I wouldn't drop a guy like this. The going rate right now seems to be a second round pick. These are DLF trades, Trade Finder, a 24 or 25. I saw a bunch of those. I actually saw 2 trades where he was moved for a first round pick. I would love that. It seems unlikely, but if I could, get a second round pick, if I could somehow turn him into Jaden Reed, I would do it for sure. Wow, Nate, you're really doubling down today, by the way.
It's good to be right sometimes.
Tell us who, tell us why.
Tony Pollard, he's the RB13 on Keep Trade Cut still at this point. 26.5 years old.
People believe. On
the franchise tag. Like one of the most obvious sells, I think, in fantasy football. Listen to his point totals the last couple weeks. 9.3, 6.5. He did have 17 points against the Chargers, thanks to 7 targets and 6 receptions. That was really good. Works out sometimes. But the week before that, 8.4. Week before that, 9. So of the last 5 weeks, he's only broken 10 fantasy points once. And it's just been it's a slog at this point. He's only had 2 total touchdowns the entire season, both coming in the first game of the year. While we enjoyed the beginning of the year, 22.2 points in the first game, 19.9 the second week, he showed that explosiveness and that opportunity. But the Cowboys offense has not needed Tony Pollard to, tote the ball a bunch. He hasn't had more than 15 carries since week 3. He hasn't been needed to make the game-breaking plays. The defense is too good. Dak's been looking, really smooth operator out there. And Tony Pollard just does what he needs, but it doesn't equate to big fantasy points for your team. And when you put in the contract situation, when you put in the age, it just doesn't make sense for him to be valued as the running back 13 at this point. Not when there's rookies that are starting to get some snaps. Not when there's other players coming out of the woodwork who are younger, older players like Alvin Kamara who are scoring many, many more points. I would much rather have Alvin Kamara straight up over Tony Pollard in Dynasty, because I know Alvin Kamara is winning me weeks this year, and Tony Pollard's a free agent at the end of the year. Just doesn't make sense to me that he's valued this high. It really just, at the end of the day, does not make sense to me, except for the star on the side of his helmet is the only reason that he's RB13 right now. We got to get rid of him. Like I said, give me Kamara, give me Javonte Williams, give me Rashad White is going to be a receiving back in this league for a very long time. Hashtag James White. Yeah. Okay. I will take Rashad White straight up over Tony Pollard. I think you can absolutely get more in most situations. You should be able to get Rashad White in a second, I think, for Tony Pollard or something like that. Maybe you need to throw a throw-in player in the back. Charbonnet in a second, I would take that as well. Any of these other, rookie running backs are starting to be productive. Tajay Spears in a second. The thing at the end of the day is, as good as Tony Pollard has been, he's not being productive now. Doesn't have age on his side. Doesn't have his contract on his side. Not a lot going for him right now if he can't bring that productivity back. And even if he does, it's limited time. So give me one of those other guys.
I think Tony Pollard is still good enough to be better than what he's been this season. This was kind of a disappointing one for me. I've been a Tony Pollard fan.
Yeah, and then part of the problem here is you watch Tony Pollard right now, and it's not the Tony Pollard of last year.
He's
not as explosive after this injury.
This last game, the Eagles-Cowboys game, of course, I watched it, and I saw him got caught a lot more than he would have. And I understand that the Eagles have a very good defensive line, but that doesn't mean they have the fastest defensive line in the NFL. I just thought I saw him get run down more than he typically should. Nate's moving on from Tony Pollard. Basically, Nate is just saying, told you so in this podcast here. I'm going to tell you about my next sell now before it's too late. Nate, I'm sorry, but I'm selling Gus Edwards. I have reasons. I don't sell based off vibes. I can tell you that. I still think he is the guy for Baltimore moving forward this year. We discussed that in the last podcast. 5 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. Fantastic. He's going to be a free agent after the season. I looked at his contract. In case you're wondering, good place to look at contract stuff if you want things in the contract in the context, overthecap.com. That's where I get all my contract information from. His 2024 year is voided on his contract. He's going to be turning 29 next season. At best, after this year, I think he's a spot starter. I see it unlikely that he's a starter in the NFL moving forward. Not that he's going to be a bad back, but I'm moving him now while I can maximize the value. I see him going for a second or multiple thirds. I even saw one where he went straight up for Jonathan Mingo. I don't know how I feel about that one so much. I mean, obviously
a rebuilding team. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, the wide receivers, they have that long-term value, so I don't hate it so much. I would try
Jonathan Mingo quietly has like 200 yards, which I know doesn't sound very impressive, but he's just about on pace for 500 yards this season, which if he gets to that point, that's a nice threshold for a rookie season.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too, especially when you consider Adam Thielen is just basically going insane. I like the draft capital here, but I would also consider moving him for a younger upside running back and plus assets like a Jalen Warren. I'd even consider taking a shot if I'm in a rebuild and I got a really, really bad situation, moving him for J.K. Dobbins. I think J.K. Dobbins is a starter, at least a 1A in a committee somewhere next year. Nate, probably not in Baltimore.
Probably not in Baltimore.
Yeah. And I think wherever he goes, he probably has a bigger role than Gus Edwards does. But I'd ask for something on top of that as well, just because, the injury is bad. See if we can manipulate that into getting more. And then, Nate, you're going to tell us who you're selling now and trying to manipulate one of your league mates as well.
Yeah, we're all about manipulation over here, apparently. Take what you can get. Sell it, take your shot, get the most you can, but also be a good league mate at the same time. Davante Adams, he should have got sold by the Raiders. They didn't sell him. Now you have to, unfortunately, because they didn't sell him. They are 4-5. So they're out of the Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes, essentially. I don't think they're going to have a top 5 pick. He's got 9.5 fantasy points the last 2 games, Mike. That's not averaging 9.5 points. That is a combined 9.5 fantasy points over the last 2 games, Davante Adams. That is that one game where Jimmy G hardly threw the ball, and the other game where Aiden O'Connell just played for the Raiders. Jacoby Myers continues to be productive, though. So it's not just that the entire offense is trash. Josh Jacobs has looked better. Jacoby Myers is getting his targets, getting his production. Davante Adams just is getting taken out of the game. And when he is getting opportunity, there just simply isn't enough opportunity for him to reach the levels that we've seen before. He doesn't fit the timeline of this team. And now he can't leave until the end of the season. So he doesn't look like he's going to be in line for a lot of production the rest of this season. So his value will only go down from here on out. We also know, he's on the wrong side of 30. So he's got the age factor against him. With the change of Jimmy G to Aiden O'Connell and the firing of Josh McDaniels and Davante Adams staying on the Raiders, this is a very obvious sell before it is too late window. And it's unfortunate because Davante Adams has had such a great career, and it sucks to see it start to fall off like this. I think I'm not calling it. I'm not saying he's washed. He's still great, but the situation now is just a real negative for his production. And when you're over 30 and your production starts going down, your value goes down pretty heavily as well. This is the time to move off. Davante Adams, try to find someone who's competitive, who needs a wide receiver, who thinks they can buy low in Davante Adams. I'm not sure at this point you can get a 24 first for him. I would gladly take a 25 first if I can get that. 26 first, give me a first round for Davante, and I'm happy. Outside of that, I'll take a wide receiver in a second, kind of do a tier down. Wide receivers I would like to package with a second. It could be a late second. That's fine with me. Deontay Johnson, Jahan Dotson, Nico Collins. I like all those guys to go try to tier down, quote unquote, from Davante Adams. If I'm competitive, I don't mind going after Amari Cooper, Mike Evans in a second on top. Davante Adams. I'm getting, I think, just longevity, if not more. Better production rest of the season, most likely. If and at worst, if Davante Adams, does better than his situation, I don't expect his production to be that much better than Cooper Evans at this point. So, at worst, you're making a lateral move and you get a second round pick on top.
Let's close it out here, but I'm going to tell you why I'm selling Austin Ekeler. Ekeler, Austin Ekeler is going to be a free agent after this season. He's going to be 28, like Gus Edwards, getting up there, almost pushing the wrong side of 30. We know how productive this dude can be. Look good against the Jets. He's missed 3 games this year with an ankle sprain. It only gets worse for running backs as they get older. We know that. I want to sell him to a contender. I want to get younger, Nate. I want to move on. What I am doing is trying to get a 24 first for Austin Ekeler. That appears to be the going rate. And look, the fact of the matter is I could take that first and turn into a wide receiver, which better dynasty longevity. Exactly. I also saw some trades here where he got moved for a first and a second. One where he went straight up for Drake London. I'll just keep Ekeler at that point, to be honest with you.
Depends on your team situation.
I would try to move him straight up for a different wide receiver at that point. Another interesting trade that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit was Ekeler for Davante Adams straight up. What are your thoughts on that? I think I like that. I just traded for I'm saying A-Chain. I don't care. I just traded for him as well. That trade was offered to me.
Yeah, I love A-Chan. I think he's a top 5 dynasty running back at this point.
Once Mostert's gone, for sure.
Yeah, and the Dolphins offense, they love him. If he's gonna, I don't think he's gonna be injury prone, but let's hope not. Outside of that, I think he's gonna be very productive. A guy that we're gonna love to have. I would, if you're capable of making this trade, make it.